Hello!
Hello.
Oh, isn't this weird? We're in a split screen and we're not on the sofa. The sofa's behind Jason, being all behind him-y, like an assassin. It's an assassin sofa.
There's a wall between us, though.
Hello to Pair of Geeks Live in a slightly unconventional format for reasons that will become clear in a little bit. Now, we have a show lined up for you tonight, our last show before Christmas, because we take December off. We wouldn't even normally go out tonight. Just not a Pair of Geeks shuts down over Christmas. If you get a video, it's kind of like a bonus, because like we don't normally do. Christmas is off. There's like too much stuff happening. Our audience is doing stuff. We're doing stuff. And it's like odds of meeting up are just remote. So, it's Christmas, guys. Come on. It just is. Now, we have topics, RPG related topics that we're going to be discussing with you. And if I click the right button, I'll be able to see what they are. They are giving bonus XP to individual players. How and when to do it. RPG Christmas presents, PC safe distance and non-lethal killings and other nonsense. Those are just kind of things I thought of earlier when I created the stream.
Mm-hmm.
We are prone to talking about all sorts of weird RPG-related stuff.
Yes.
We're not so good at handing over to each other.
Well, I didn't know if you'd finished. Right, shall I do Patreon then?
Yes.
Okay. Also, hello, Steve and Michael B.
Hello.
While you open up the beer, let me get open the Patreon. Or I could just look behind me. Yes, in fact, I could look behind me at the poster in the distance there. And just hit myself on the microphone. Apologies. We have, as the most awesome people in the world who are sort of stretched out over there. Okay, seriously, I have to move around a bit more. We have Russell Higgins, Joy Magina, Mark Threlfall, Brandon Fishwick, Amber, Dave Poirier, Field Enterprises, Nate Hanshin, AJ, Phil Bates, Elizabeth Chai Predicle, and Dave Gaskin. So thank you so much to all of you. You have helped so much with postage for Complus, seriously. In the end, it was pretty much a match to the whole patron.
Yeah, it was $375 to post all of the stuff out, and we had $350 in the Patreon. So thank you very much. Do keep your pledges in there, please, because next year, and yes, according to the projections, we'll have about 300 in there next year, because that was the full lifetime history of the Patreon.
Yes.
And next year is going to be a little harder. Because we are hoping it'll be bigger and therefore cost us more in postage. So, yes, thank you for your support. You've really helped make it. We raised, what was it, 3,872 something pounds, something in that region. It was a lot of money that's doing a lot of good. The head of the charity is going to come over Christmas. We're going to have a chat, catch up, and see what difference the money is making. And also give them a load of stuff that they won.
Yes.
So, yes, indeed, Chiana is in the background. She's actually our channel intro video. Like, if you are not a subscriber and you look at the Pair of Geeks page, and please don't unsubscribe to find out, or if you do, subscribe again afterwards. But Gianna is the one who gives the channel intro, because I thought she could get more subs than I could.
Mm-hmm. But yes, there she is. I can't move my arm enough.
With my name written across her breasts.
Yes. I bet that makes you happy.
Well, actually, no, it's her signature, isn't it? It says to Becky Chiana.
But your name is still written across her breasts.
Yes. Okay, awesome. That makes me happy.
So, shall we explain to people why we're in separate rooms and
yes,
half of our bodies are cut off?
Yes. Why don't you explain it whilst I put a link in the chat at the appropriate moment?
Okay. So basically, we thought it would be cool this time, because it's Christmas coming up and we're not going to be here for some time, to bring you people onto the show with us.
if you would
that's a really
like
good
to,
idea.
and have a microphone and headset, and ideally a webcam, but that's not absolutely necessary. I don't know what it does if you don't have a webcam. I've no idea.
It just does like a little picture, like Google
Does it?
Hangouts. Yeah,
Does it?
yeah. Because look, I can stop the camera and it brings up my character because
Oh.
I uploaded one.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Okay, so there is a link I'm put into the chat. If you're watching live with us now, and 5 of you are, yay! By all means, come on in. Now, here's the thing. With this bit of software, we do actually need to then... I have to do a thing to bring you into the chat. And I have a habit of not noticing people, as Jason found out when we were using this software for a game last week.
Yes.
There's no alert. It just kind of... A tiny little thing appears in the bottom corner.
Teeny weeny
But
thing.
I'll do it. We have the first person in, of course. Regular to POG 2. I don't think he's ever been on POG 1. And if he doesn't tilt his web camera down slightly, he won't be either. Because, like, you can... But let's do it. Let's bring him onto the stream, and he'll make a joke very soon about all the viewers disconnecting as he comes on. All right, so our first topic is giving XP bonuses to individual players, how and when to do it. And let's bring in our guest speaker, and we'll talk about RPGs. And maybe if it's not that topic, is just a suggestion, maybe they've got other ideas. Please welcome Ronnie to the stream. Hello, Ronnie. We're in Dallas format now. How does that Dallas theme go, Ronnie?
Do, 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 do. Here we're doing Dallas theme.
Not anymore.
Yes. And now we've definitely lost a lot of the chat from my singing.
No, they're all still here. So yeah, feel free to join us if you're watching on the stream, and if not, then don't. Just feel free to carry on listening or do what you normally do, or indeed disconnect. So yes, we're talking about now. This idea for this topic came about because it happened to me this week. I was given bonus XP.
Ooh.
I was.
What, just you, or was everybody given bonus XP?
Just me getting bonus XP. And it's something that's happened a couple of times before. And indeed has happened to other people in games I've been in. It's not just exclusively me. I mean, I'm good, but I'm not that good, No, I am actually that good. But
see, this is what for those who maybe don't watch Pear of Geeks too. Where have you been? It's this wonderful show of humility that we love from Becky so much. It's just this wonderful, wonderful, humble persona that we have.
Well, look, so yes, Ronnie is a regular in our Monday night game, which is over on Pear of Geeks 2. But this stream isn't just exclusively reserved for people who have been on POG before.
Absolutely
you
not.
too can come join us, whoever you are, as long as you're,
Civil.
Civil. Yes, civil or civil. Civils get an exclusionary condition for being civil. So,
I mean, one of us had to be battle.
I was waiting for a Faulty Towers reference there.
I suspect that's me. Right. Let's talk about bonus XP, because it's the whole idea of giving out XP for good role playing. It sounds so much better in theory than it is in practice, isn't it?
Well,
Like,
how do
as
you
a
feel
GM,
about it compared to inspiration? Like giving that out for role playing?
Same thing. Right.
No, go for it. Finish your
Okay.
thought.
Well, it's just that as a GM, I find it really hard to give XP out for good role playing.
Why?
Well,
You can't just keep us hanging like that.
There's dramatic pause, and then there's
Anticip.
patient. Yeah.
Yes.
well, it could be one of two reasons, but I have a lump in my throat. No, it could be that I'm just holding everyone else to my standard, of course. But
And
no,
there's that humility again. Um,
I don't know. I think it's because, like, if players are role playing badly and you don't give XP bonuses out because they're not doing great role playing, where's the incentive coming from to then make them role play well? Because if they're just, let's say you've got a group of murder hobos and you start the campaign and you want them to role play well, so you decide beforehand, I'm going to give really good bonuses out for good role play, and you even tell them that at the start of the game. But let's say there's no examples of good role playing to reward in the first session. That first session is really the session that sets the tone. And after that, they haven't seen the incentive. But then you get the other issue. Let's say somebody does some really good role playing and you incentivize it by giving them XP. Now let's say that somebody goes, okay, right, so that's what they're looking for, and they try to give the same thing, but that player isn't able to. So you get one of two things happening. You get that player giving an example of role playing that's kind of painful to wait through for because they're kind of not able to do that level of role play, but now they're taking up the time and do you see what I mean? Am I making sense?
Yeah. I have a slightly different view, funnily enough. And I'm going to base this on the system I'm using most at the moment, which is Savage Worlds. And that's the great currency of bennies. Yes, Stephen, I know you're about to go, oh no, but bear with me. Stephen doesn't like the concept of bennies. So, bear with me. Because you can't
every game.
I tend to give out bennies or give back bennies or give extra bennies to people who do an amazing piece of role playing. If it's a combat, if they do just the most incredible skill use at a dramatic moment, they land that incredible life-saving blow that stops an entire village from being ransacked, then I tend to give a benny back. Or if they come up with a really good idea, even if it doesn't pay off, because, sometimes shit doesn't go your way. But if it's a really great idea, then I tend to give a benny back. Or, give a benny. Because then I find if you do have the person who's maybe not a confident role player, they might be a very confident ideas person. Or with the murder hobos, they might be the person that jumps in with the the life-saving, saves the entire village. So that way, players don't feel that there's only one way to get a bonus reward. There's a couple of options, and they can find the one that best suits how they play.
No, that's a really good point. Like introducing additional mechanisms for, as you call it, giving a benny. But just to point out, that concept is in every system, and even if it isn't, you can always do the bonus XP thing.
Yeah.
So Corporation has, what do they call it?
Conviction points.
Conviction. D&D has inspiration. Fate has fate points.
Warhammer has fate points and fortune points.
Really? But they have two?
True 20 has conviction points as well, which...
But hang on, what's this one system with two?
Basically, the fortune points thing is more equivalent to what we're talking about, but fate points are kind of they're more major. I can't remember if they kind of streamlined it for 4th edition. I think they might have done or changed it a little bit. There is the whole sort of I keep calling it retribution, but it's resolve or something like that. So I think they may have changed it a little bit.
Steve has brought up a point that and this I think is where I sort of mostly sit with this, in that he says good role playing is its own reward. And I completely agree with that. I role play because I love to role play and I love to listen to other people role play. And I feel if you incentivize a certain kind of role playing, you're almost in a sense saying, look, if you're the kind of player that goes for power gaming, you can earn your power from playing the game how we like. And that's kind of where the kind of dichotomy comes from. Like,
he has a point, but my only sort of response to that, in its way, is especially, and this is going to sound somewhat detrimental to my players, and it's not meant to be so. When I've ran Savage Worlds, particularly at my friend the local gaming store, these are players who, some of them are new to the hobby. Some of them some of them only played sort of murder hobo, very action orientated, not very character orientated role playing before.
Yeah.
It was role playing, roll the dice rather than, and I found it a very good way of positive reinforcement. Is that the psychological term? The positive reinforcement for doing some role playing. It's getting less and less with the role playing because there's a sort of stagnation point where everyone you want, if at the start you say, oh yeah, that was really good, you really owned that scene, there's a Benny, but then once everyone gets to that level, you want it to be more, and then more, and then more. So there is a point where you stop giving bennies because there's only so far someone can go that they feel comfortable with. Whereas, and this is where it comes to Stephen. Stephen and I I've played in Stephen games. In fact, I'm playing in a Call of Cthulhu game he's running at the moment. And if you think I'm a nasty GM, geez. He's Stephen, you're a lovely guy. Please don't hurt me in the next session.
Please don't upset our viewers, Ronnie.
But he's a great. But when I'm dealing with sort of players I had when I grew up, I hold them to a different standard. So things I would give bennies away with one group, I wouldn't necessarily do it with another because I hold them to a different standard.
Yeah.
What happens though if those players mix?
One hopes, and it has happened. It has happened because I had one of my players and two of my sort of older players, if you like. We played a cyberpunk game. It was Savage Worlds, but it was cyberpunk setting called Interface Zero. And what tended to happen was the newer player raised their game. It took a while.
How much of that, honestly, would you say was that incentivized by them seeing you giving loads of XP to other people for good roleplay? And that's where I think it kind of falls down as a concept. If you're giving all the rewards to the strong players, then the weaker players are going, GM hates me.
Which is why I think you need to have more than one string of possible reward, or you will find certain players.
You need to find a way of rewarding everyone. That's the problem.
Yes, that's why I like to have a
player that's missing out. Then they're going to think you hate them.
That's why I like to have different strands that might yield a reward. That way, if you're not someone who's confident, and I do have players who are not very confident role playing, but they might come up with a hell of an idea. And one of those ones where you sit back and go, I just want this to work. I don't care if it doesn't. I want it to work because this would just be funny as all get out. or it'll be really, it could be almost game changing in terms of the plot. And you sort of sit there and go, that's actually really well thought out. But it's going to come down as a character to some sort of skill check or something along the way, or some NPC might make a notice or something. So it might go wrong. But the idea is so good, I incentivize that as well. And I like that. I like to have more than one possible reward stream, because otherwise you do run that risk.
Just before we sort of go to the chat, Jason, do you have thoughts on it?
Oh yeah. I mean, my sort of one of my favorite incentives is still luck from Call of Cthulhu, because of that reason that you can give it to everyone. And one thing I was going to say was, yes, you have people who are good at role playing, like in character and stuff like that. You also have people who are great at coming up with an idea. But you also have people who are really good at kind of describing things or telling a story, but not necessarily role playing in character. So you might have somebody who can give a really good, summary of what happened last session, or they might do a little flashback thing, but it's not directly in character. It's not first person or what have you. So I think there's different ways for people to role play in their own mind, and I think we should still reward that, even if it's not your idea.
When you were GMing the Clockwork Saga, the sequel campaign, which was that saga, wasn't it? That was something you were doing. That whole whoever recapped the previous session would get a point of inspiration. In fact, it was the only way to get inspiration in the campaign, probably because we're all terrible at role playing. But
to be honest, inspiration is in general, I always forget to give it. Whereas luck, for example, I remember a lot more because you use it a lot more. Like everyone wants luck because they want to be able to, tweak their die roll if you mess up with it. And it's very sought after.
The luck thing in Call of Cthulhu is actually an interesting one because, for those who aren't familiar with how that mechanic works, so and I forget actually how that, because it's kind of like a stat, and I forget exactly how much you start with. That's randomly determined.
It depends. So I believe you roll 3 d6 and you times it by 5. So there is a bit of randomization of how much you start with.
Yeah, but you can apply those luck points, and you get a lot of them, and you can apply them to any dice roll by however much you want. So if you miss a dice roll you really want to make by 25, you can use 25 of your luck. Won't leave you with an awful lot, but you can do that. You can make that dice roll. And it reminded me of that time when I replaced luck in Call of Cthulhu game with a Jenga tower.
Yes.
So
cool.
Each brick you took out was worth a +5 on your roll. So if you wanted to modify any result, you could, but at some point that tower was going to tumble and then a great evil would unfold.
See, the idea of the Jenga tower, I think, is great, and it's one of the things that's intrigued me about Dread as an RPG, because it uses that as its standard mechanic. The only problem I have with it as a physical device is I'm shaky as hell.
So don't rely on it. But yeah, I mean, it is.
If I have to do like close contact work like that, my hands start shaking like that. That tower will last 2 seconds with me.
But here's the thing, like, it puts so much extra intensity in the game, and everyone's kind of nervous from a fairly early stage with Jenga. But they're working together to accomplish it as well. Like, as the players are not wanting that stack to tumble. No. So they work together, they help each other and stuff. As long as only one person's one finger is touching it at a time. It doesn't matter who takes it out. But the suspense it added to that particular game was great. And we would do it online if it wasn't for the fact that Tabletop Simulator's Jenga doesn't work. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
But I think one thing as well that was important about that Jenga tower was it created this tension, which psychologically would surely bring out more role-playing because it set the right tone, it immersed you more, it gave you the feeling that you wanted us to feel.
Yeah.
this, dread, horror, whatever, because it's Cthulhu.
Mm.
But I recently bought a new RPG rule set called Active Exploits, which once I've given it a good read through, I'm eager to try it. I'm very eager to try it online.
Oh.
And the reason I'm eager to try it online as much as anything else is that it doesn't use dice or any randomizer at all. You have a set of stats. It's skill plus attribute, try and reach a target number, and you have a set of luck points that you can add to it. It's like a pool that you can add to it, but there's no rolling. You either
can you
make it or
take
you
away?
don't.
Can you recover luck by trivializing something?
Well, you can recover luck, and this is where there may be groans from everyone. Stevie might like this. You can recover luck at the GM's discretion,
Okay.
which is either, depending on the GM you've got, is either going to be something that will say, "Oh, okay," or you're going to sit there and go, "We're going to die horribly." Obviously.
But that whole the GM's out to kill us type mentality is a kind of like a running humour thing that goes all the way back, and it's not true, and we all know it's not. And GMs aren't really out to get us.
Yeah, Stephen, you want to jump in here?
Is he really out to get you?
I'm playing in your Cthulhu game. You want to weigh in on this?
Speaking of jumping in, yeah.
Nathan H agreed with your earlier statement about multiple revenue streams, if you like, for bennies. With however, he goes on to say, with so many rubbish players these days who care more about sharing memes mid-game than actual immersion and role-playing, I give extra XP to those who do more than their share. And to that's a kind of a slightly different topic. Because that's not so much the realms of rewarding good play as is what you do about a player who is at the table but not really engaging. And sometimes we have to accept as GMs it's because we're not doing a great job. But other times it's the player, and it can be they might just be addicted to their phone. And one of the things I've done in the past is when a player goes on their phone during a game, I will actually draw the whole table to the phone. Like, as the GM, I pause my narration and say, "Is something the matter? Are you okay?" And all eyes go on them. Is it an important call? Are your parents all right? It's kind of like so. I sort of set the premise of this must be a really important phone call, because if it is, I'm happy for you to deal with it. If you're messaging your father who's dying of cancer, go ahead, right? But if you're scrolling Facebook, then I want you to put the phone down. And I've always found in the past a great way of doing that is that pause the whole table, bring the attention to it. Is this serious? Are you okay?
There are also now phone cages you can get.
Yes, I've seen some of them. They're like a little jail. Everyone puts their phone in.
I'm so tempted by that.
I'm tempted to, but you know what? The kind of players who are the problem are the kind of players who wouldn't put their phone into the jail to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
The only thing I'll say is that, particularly when it comes to the map of the world, a lot of them will have the PDF of the map of the world on their phone. So they can zoom in and say, right, that's where we are in the world, and so on. And they like to keep that there, or so they tell me.
Then print it out and put it on the table.
I keep printouts for most things. I'm working through my dungeon at the moment, which my players love me. I keep having to say that.
Delusion's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I'm the best role player in the world.
The world.
and the whole world.
I actually,
Right.
I actually said to I was at my friendly local gaming store yesterday, and I said I may have to start the session on Sunday by reminding the players they're not allowed to swear in the shop. And I said if I don't do that, then there could very well be some colourful language as this bloody dungeon goes ahead, because they're not going to like me very much by the end of Sunday's session. But they're high level characters going through the
Exactly.
kind
You've
of
got to
the
challenge
big,
them.
Yeah.
big set piece dungeon that is going to make or break the campaign.
But you've said something that I can shoehorn into a segue into our next topic. You're playing in a role-playing shop, and of course, it is the build-up to Christmas. So, what kind of gaming gifts can we get us nerds? What do we buy for other nerds? Because, like, the standard things, like, you can't buy a role-playing player a rule book. They already have them. Now, there are some exceptions. Obviously, as everyone knows, huge fan of Corporation here. Corporation has many books. I don't have them all. There is one I don't have. There's a thing. But usually, you can't really buy geeks books. And you also can't really buy them. I mean, we all love getting more dice, but you wouldn't, unless, it would be pointless buying me a set of dice that you thought were pretty. Most people in my family wouldn't think to buy me dice. And if they did, would it be a set that I'm interested in? Or would it be plain white? Do you see what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it comes to RPGs at Christmas, the golden rule seemed to be don't get me one.
yeah, it's hard to buy somebody into a role-playing gift, unless you happen to know of a book they're short of.
Yeah, what has happened is I have tended to get, because I'm also into board games and so on as well, I have tended to get a lot of board games and card games and so on as presents instead. Which which I think works better in a lot of ways. As you say, unless you're missing a particular book. I mean, I can say that the only other thing I would say is what I found occasionally is buying a new system, even if it's in a genre the person already knows, even if that new system, the player looks through it and goes, nah, not really a system I like. There might be something in there, a concept, an idea,
Yes, I agree.
a background. There might be something in there that intrigues or interests, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I don't like the system, but I could port that idea to the system I do use.
I definitely
And
think
use it there."
if you've got just setting books, so for example the Lone Wolf RPG by Cubicle 7 has like a settings book. You've got stuff for Call of Cthulhu, Warhammer as well. There's no mechanics in there, but it gives all the lore, and that can give a ton of inspiration.
Yes.
But if you're buying a game, if you're buying a present for somebody else in your RPG group, for example, in a way, one of the worst things you could do is buy them a game that they would be interested in. When I first got given Corporation, the person who gave it to me was another gamer in the group that I was in. They'd seen me show interest in it at a trade show and thought, I'll get that for Christmas. Now, and I do happen to love that game, but in a way, it could have been a terrible gift because he could have got me this thing and then the group would never have played it. And in actual fact, when we did play it, I ran my first ever Corporation game, having never experienced the game before, not really knowing how to do it and not running a very good game, if I'm honest. They persisted and gave me a second week and I still hadn't hit the nail on the head. My first Corporation games were complete flops. I kind of struggled with it because I had no frame to understand it within. until I experienced Jason running Corporation. And then I go, okay, I'm starting to get how this should work now. And that is now, obviously, I've said it many times, it's a game I love. But the in many cases, like if I was to buy you an RPG, Ronnie, because you're in one of my gaming groups, if I thought, all right, I'll buy you an RPG, what's the odds of our group actually getting around to running that RPG? We play maybe 2 different games a year, maybe 3. But
there's that. But I have our group, yourselves, Phil, me. I have my group at the Friendly Local Gaming. In fact, I have 2 groups there.
Yeah, so arguably you could say maybe one person is in maybe 6 games a year.
Yeah.
Like plus one shots. But so my point is, it's like the odds of these things often never actually get used is kind of what I'm getting to. I think, and dice is hard to get. And there is a particular set of, like, I would like to get more of the ones I'm currently using. These rainbow dice, gem rainbow dice, and I would quite like to get them up to the thing. I'd quite like to get duplicates so that I could do 2d6, 3d6, etc. But that kind of situation doesn't come up that often. Like, once you get some nice dice that you're happy with, you generally stick with those dice.
You do, yes. I sometimes like to get new dice for a different character I'm playing.
Well, that's an interesting approach. I mean, I've bought many new sets of dice, but quite often they go unused, or I'll use them a few times and then go back to my core dice.
Maybe it's because of my synesthesia, but I kind of, associating characters with certain colors and patterns, and it's like, yes, that works. But I have got from my bookshelf another suggestion for a present, which is essentially not role-playing rule books, but supplements. So something like this, which is essentially you got all your backstory suggestions in there, something like Return of the Lazy DM, something universal that you can use with any system. You've got Raging Swan Press, they do a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's tools. It's tools to help you as a DM or player.
Yeah, but even then, a lot of these things are going online now and having subscription charges, which it's a change, and I'm not going to argue against it, because actually some of them are really cool, and like in a way it does help these things to continue to be developed, and there are arguments for and as well, but it also means it's very hard to give that as a gift.
Well, yeah, true. I was thinking more physical, but yeah, if you wanted to go digital, yes, there are
my point
subscriptions.
That
there are those that
sector is heading that direction, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, but there are those that aren't, for example, that you just get with a one-off, like Arkham Forge Campaign Logger. So, and a lot of these we've been sponsored by, so if you were to go and watch the Com Plus stream, you get a wonderful idea of things like that.
Yes, I mean, the thing is, I've gotten to a point now. Talking of saturation points earlier, I've gotten to a saturation point when it comes to RPGs, because there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many games you can run, and unless a game is really jumping out at me now, it's either doing something different, which is why I got active exploits, or just appeals to me, because I still desperately want to get the Princess Bride RPG. Just because it's the Princess Bride. I want it. I'm sorry, I do. I have the PDF of the primer for it, and the fact that it is essentially using fudge, which is the precursor to Fate.
Yeah.
Now,
and they've changed Fate points to, but Grandpa points.
Now, those of us who are into minis, I think it's actually becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
In some ways, if you wanted to give a gift for me, like I'm dead easy. Just go to thomarillion.de, or reaperminiature.com.
And buy anything.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a duplicate, especially if it's scenery. You can always duplicate scenery. So yeah, literally anything. But there are some accessories that are kind of in a class of their own. Like the first one I'm going to mention here is not actually a sponsor, but Dogmite Games do these amazing GM screens. Like they're wood carved and they stain the wood, so you get like these dragons and out of carved wood, and it's all colourful and amazing, or Cthulhu or something like that. I would love to get them on as a sponsor actually for Compulsory. But then you get people like Creative Quest and hang on, the other one that also begins with C.
Cognitive Merchant.
Cognitive Merchant, thank you. Doing some really sort of cool accessory type stuff, which they're the kind of things that. And of course, Wormwood. Let's not forget Wormwood.
Yes.
Another one does some great accessories, and like they're wonderful things to be able to give. But a lot of those kind of custom or low production quantity things, you would say, like a lot of them are handmade and things like that.
Yeah.
So they can be quite expensive.
They are, but there is that thing of their handmade personal sort of they are for you. Everything is unique. It's one of a kind.
Well, that's a Cognitive Merchant thing, isn't it? Where they make it all unique.
Yeah, mostly. But if you're say a small business, you can sort of tailor around what people want more.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, like the people like Dogmite Games and Wormwood, I think are they do production. So I don't think, from my understanding, I don't think they're doing one-offs per se. I mean, but the thing is, those are very expensive. I wouldn't get something that expensive for somebody in my gaming group. If somebody in my gaming group wanted me to give them that, they'd have to come to Complus. So that would be the only way, because it's too like maybe I might buy something like that for Jason at some point. Didn't think of it in time this year, so no.
Don't worry. But there are people arriving in the chat, and I feel like we're ignoring them.
No. Hello, Scott Purr, Chav Hunter, Nathan H is still here. Yay!
Nathan H apparently has bush baby hair.
That's no excuse. Just turn your webcam off. Join us. Come join us. Link is in the chat. I'm going to repeat it again. There we go. Come join us. Take part in the conversation.
Because we're doing that this
provided
time.
You've got headphones. Please make sure you got headphones if you're going to come in. If you haven't got them, then by all means. Hello, Sue.
Hello, Sue.
Welcome. So come join us, chat. This is the Pear of Geeks live Christmas special, where we're chatting with our audience. Those who bothered to join. Thank you very much, Ronnie, for doing so.
I've just realised, Ronnie, where's your hat?
Oh my God, you're on air without your hat, Ronnie. That is just the behaviour.
You said
it's in my bag.
You said on Monday, I'm going to wear my hat for every single game up until Christmas.
You are absolutely right. Give me 2 seconds. I will go get it.
Thank you. Hello, Rafael Carrera.
Hello.
Yellow.
So, I mean, I can't really think of like much else. Like somebody I think in the chat earlier said things like maps and stuff.
There were a couple of things. So somebody suggested things like maps, which again is kind of universal. I must say, because I love them, Heroic Maps, they have so much in their catalogue, whether you're into fantasy, sci-fi, steampunk, horror, it doesn't matter. They will have something that you can use. And it's, again, very very adaptive, very universal, so you can make it work with other stuff. And it's pretty cheap stuff overall. Like each map is sort of under £5, $5.
But they're PDFs, so you do have to print them out yourself.
Yes, they are PDFs. That's true. Obviously, you've got sort of printed maps or printed grids that you can get from other places. You can get ones that are just literally like snow or sand you know, sort of blank. I
Well,
nearly
I
got
think-
that once
I think with
for
the
D&D.
PDF, they've got layers in, haven't they? So you can add either
Yes.
squares or hexes or something.
That's right. Yeah,
Mm.
so you can choose. But yeah, I nearly got one once where it's like on one side it was like just sort of snow wasteland, on the other side it was desert. Which thought
Well, I did get the Fat Dragon Games, the Ravenfell. In fact, it's one of our more popular YouTube videos. It's really old now, about 5-6 years old. But I did a review of their Ravenfell map system. And it was sorry, the beer's making me burp. But it was quite interesting because that was actually, you built it in 3D, even though it's out of paper. You kind of, you know, fold, but it's like an origami RPG city, if that makes sense. And I built this whole city, and I kept it for a couple of years. I had this I used it for a town in one of my game worlds called Frostshore, and we had various. It ended up with battles there and all sorts, but it was a place the players kept coming back to. So I got this town out that I would rebuild each time. And I mean, it was interesting as a system because it was relatively quick to set up. Like when I do miniatures, I'm really careful with every model as I get it out. I get them out one at a time. With the paper stuff, you just kind of pile it on the table, put it in the right place. You know, it's fine. It doesn't matter if it gets damaged. Whereas you can't do that with a model. It's like, no, especially if like my building's a tabletop world. You know, like you don't toss those out of a storage bucket. Those are kind of like the Rolls Royce of buildings. You know. Quite expensive, and you spend a lot of time painting them. Whereas the Fat Dragon Games paper system, you just kind of glue it together and stuff like that. But of course, what did happen is over time it wore out, and you know a couple of the buildings would get bent and stuff, and it was quite flimsy stuff. And the other big issue was, although it promoted this fold flat system, supposedly it could you build it like it's like a pop-up book. That doesn't work. Just doesn't work. So it took up huge amounts of storage space because I kind of glued it all solid and firm, and I had to add strengthening stuff in there to sort of keep it in shape, and it just didn't really work. But of course, it did allow me to then be a bit rougher with it because I'd strengthened everything.
What I have seen with people who've used that sort of material before is printing them out, is then gluing it onto foam board.
Which is what I did.
Yeah. I'm just using it.
The thing is, if you are ever going to do that, by the way, seriously, throw away your inkjet printer and buy a colour laser. You can buy them for 40 to 60 quid these days. And I printed out the entire city that I had with the toner that came with my printer, and that toner lasted another year. Right? Like inkjets, inkjets would have cost me £200 in ink to print out a city.
Yeah.
It's, you know, ridiculous money. And the other thing, like, I know we're going off RPGs for a moment, but all RPG players generally print out character sheets and stuff. Throw away your inkjets the next time the ink says I need to be changed or something, because like the ink goes dry.
Blue toner.
Yeah, well, the ink, well, that still happens with lasers, but you know the ink dries if you don't use your printer regularly. And if you do use your printer regularly, it goes, oh, well, you've used it all now. I have literally blown entire ink cartridges just trying to get the damn thing to print. And when I eventually get the thing to print, another bloody cartridge has run out. They put so little in there. And
so one present you can get is a laser printer.
all role players that like pretty character sheets need a colour
laser printer. But
yes,
there's
seriously.
also one other type of present which I've just realised that nobody has suggested yet.
Ooh.
And that is kind of clothing, memorabilia with nerdy role-playing stuff on it, coasters, T-shirts, Christmas jumpers, things like that.
I have a few T-shirts of gaming.
I'd just like to say that would have worked so much better if we had merchandise.
Yes. However,
don't do it.
Yeah.
Who wants to buy a Pear of Geeks t-shirt? We'll knock them up for next year.
Yeah. But I have so many. I'm wearing one now. One of my sort of dungeon crawl t-shirts. I've got a roll for initiative 1. You've got a cup
It's
that
hot.
says "Oh shit" with the natural 1 on it, and
It's right here, actually.
well, there you go. Oh well, shit. I beg your pardon.
Mhm.
Things like that. Are perfect because again, it's like you can. They're funny normally. You can pick something that's not necessarily tied to a mechanic. Yes, there is that T-shirt which
Well, this
I
isn't a
gave to
gaming
you.
shirt, but
No,
it's
but
a
it's
cat eating a pizza and a taco somewhere in space. I've worn it before.
yeah.
A resin 3D printer and print. You know what? I'd love a resin 3D printer, but they're really expensive. Like getting one that can do miniatures for role playing to a good standard is expensive. There's no way around that. Like you could get a cheap 3D printer, but if you're buying it for someone for doing role playing gaming or wargaming or scenery printing or something, you can't really get a cheap one.
Yes.
Like I've got some stuff that was made with a cheap 3D print, and you can see it's 3D printed. There's no getting away from it. It's like the quality isn't the same as sculpting or making molds and stuff that the kind of stuff that I would do anyway as somebody who was into that.
Yes.
I think my favorite T-shirt was one that was made for me actually by my friend Samantha. She designed the artwork on it. Lovely T-shirt that basically says "Beware the Smiling Dungeon Master."
Well, yeah, exactly. You can get like personalized stuff, which obviously fits to you.
Which I really like. My players hate it when I've worn that T-shirt on a couple of times, and a couple of times my have been situations where there's been rather a lot of PC casualties, so they've come to hate that T-shirt because they think it means their doom.
Now,
We have
one
chat.
of the we do. But mostly. I would buy a Pair of Geeks mug, says Sue Savage.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a hint. Okay.
Maybe we should do some merchandise. Maybe this is a thing. That is one possible sales lead. So we have established that we have a market of one, so we could make one mug.
Fuka's also checked in. Can't stop. Have fun, but I'm getting better.
Yay!
So
Excellent.
Glad to hear it, Fuke.
So,
We're all rooting for you.
That's good to hear, Fuke.
All right, so let's talk about. I didn't really know how to frame this. So I was looking for whenever we put the descriptions together for the episodes, it usually happens just after we get in on a Friday night, and I put the listing up and I try and think of 3 things that can be topics, and then we allow ourselves to go off topic as much as we like. And the third thing I didn't really hit as a fully formed idea.
Right, so it's just a fragment of a fleeting
it's a couple of fleeting thoughts, and it's kind of group shenanigans. Like there are certain things that evolve in groups over time. Like I used to have this group players. I still do play with some of them, but there was this period of time where we came up with this concept, what we jokingly called PC safe distance, and it became a joke within the group that we had this PC safe distance, and it emerged from theatre of the mind play when the GM asks a question such as "How far away are you?" and it's kind of a nebulous thing. It's like, well, how far away am I? Like we haven't been dealing with feet, and all of a sudden you want a specific measurement because of some trap that you're about to throw at us. Like, so they devised this kind of group language called PC safe distance, and it meant the distance at which I'm close enough to do my thing, but far enough away to be safe, right? And in a way, it's sort of cheating, right? It's sort of saying, look, I'm keeping my distance, but if I need to be close for an action,
Yeah,
then
then
I
I
am. It's
happen
kind
to
of
be
like
close. Yeah.
it's a shortcut. Well, the thing is, when you're playing Theatre of the Mind, these measurements aren't important. But when you play a system that kind of expects miniatures and tabletops and maps, then there are parts of the system where suddenly these distances are important. They become mechanically relevant. And I think it kind of evolved as a shorthand around these kind of deficiencies, if you like, of the system for what we were using it for. If that makes some sense. But
Yeah.
then, of course, over time, it kind of got out of hand. And in the end, we did ban it in that group. Said, right, okay, look, no more. Because it's the joke is old and tired now type thing. But there are other things like this. I've heard of people say that. I think the one I put in the description, if I remember, now I'm having to look at it, it was non-lethal killing. This is actually, this is a thing where role-playing games completely suck. They universally suck at this, in the sense of, because they're derived from war games, and there's this mechanical thing at the core of it. I know there isn't in things like Fate and stuff, the more story narrative arc type games, but in the more mechanical games like D&D and most RPGs out there, it's sort of still a war game. You have multiple rounds of combat where you roll damage dice against a hit point pool. And hit point systems are really broken in this sense. And it's like, what do you do if you just want to subdue someone? The hit point mechanic doesn't work. And so you come up with all these gamified mathematical ways around it. It's like, okay, if you say it's subdued damage, then you count it as the full amount of damage, but it really only does half. And all these weird systems people have and trying to get around the fact they want to knock them out.
I can't remember which system it was. It might have been D&D, but there was one time when somebody wanted to do a non-lethal blow at somebody to kind of knock them out, and they rolled such high damage. If you went just by hit points alone, it took them out completely. And whilst I'm like, okay, right, they're completely knocked out cold, I still felt like, but you got rid of all their hit points, all of them.
Yeah.
I was running a supers game. And one of the characters punched an NPC without stating that they simply wanted to knock them out. Now, there were actual rules for sort of, simply subduing or a non-lethal force. But they didn't state it, and rolled their damage and rolled so high they took the guy's head off. And that started a run. Talk about running jokes. That had started a running joke where at certain points in the campaign, I will actually turn to the player and say, right, non-lethal, just right, non-lethal.
You got like a little non-lethal flag.
Just. And she, to her credit, she now very much states non-lethal.
But this is kind of the thing. It's I don't know whether this point is really about the topic of non-lethal and subduing being inadequate in RPGs, or whether I'm really kind of wanting to talk about dialogue within groups that kind of becomes its own thing. But non-lethal damage is kind of a thing I think is broken in almost every RPG. Like, there isn't a good mechanical way of doing it in a hit point based system. Narrative system's not a problem, but
no. Although, having said that, I'm trying to wrap my brains, and Steve has just reminded me there is. I don't know whether it's from a video game or if it's from an RPG where you've got a separate health meter for lethal and non-lethal. I'm trying to remember what the hell it is.
There's a few games that do that.
Oh, well, for example,
220 uses it.
Fate kind of does it as well, in that you have stress and you have consequences, and the consequences tend to be way more lethal.
But Fate isn't really a hit point based system. It's sort of
No.
a wound based system. And that's a very different approach
Yeah,
to
yeah.
begin with. And really, I think this problem is mostly in hit point based systems. And that it is one of these two methods, isn't it? It's either you're doing a half damage but you count it as full, or you've got this separate hit point track. And neither of them are really good solutions. They're just doing complicated things with numbers for no real reason to try and circumvent the fact that hit points as a mechanic don't really work.
But you're talking about jokes or lines of dialogue that become almost infamous within a group because they get repeated.
I've remembered.
The Cyberpunk game that I ran, I mentioned earlier, we came up with such wonderful terms as lightly crippled, gentle molestation. I won't even discuss where nickel-plated nipples came from. But that
was it a middle nipple?
But it was related to middle nipple, yes.
Which is a reference to a Pog 2 video, by the way, guys. So you should watch Pog 2 games on Monday nights.
Absolutely. Come and watch
Yes,
the hilarity.
I've remembered the system. It's Star Wars Fantasy Flight. They have wounds and they have strain.
Okay.
Strain being the non-lethal. So,
and you can use strain in can't you, as a... I'm trying to remember now how Star Wars works, because it's got all the weird systems, but isn't there a way of spending strain? Am I making that up?
In specific cases, not kind of as a universal thing, but I think you can spend it to kind of cause something else. Basically, in your talents, I think there's a couple of talents where you can spend a strain to do something, if I remember rightly. Yeah, you can take a strain to take an extra action.
There you go. I knew that there was a thing.
I haven't played it for like ages, so yeah.
No, actually, for me, I think it was like 2 UK Games Expos ago when I played that droid.
Yes.
Oh, we remember
that droid. Oh, were you in that game, Ronnie?
No. Was that the year I was down?
I believe so.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were discussing it afterwards.
No,
the only games I played was the Corporation game you ran and the Hollow Earth Expedition one that Jason ran.
Stu says, my character could spend strain to make the GM upgrade attack difficulty on his NPCs.
Well, there you go. You see, there's your... Yes, there are ways to spend it, is my point. So, and I still don't... I don't know what a good system for subduing is, because part of one of the things that's often broken in a lot of RPGs is the grappling mechanics. Like, and it's something that comes up in almost every game. At some point, somebody wants to grapple someone, and again, it's a form of subduing. We don't tend to think of grappling as something that depletes the hit point track. And yet, for some reason, doing damage does, because hit point tracks are a thing. And this is kind of my problem with it. Grappling is a form of subduing, because you're holding someone so they can't escape. That's a form of subduing. And quite often, when you look at the grappling mechanics, I mean, 5e, it's very broken. The most broken game of all, I think, for grappling mechanics was Masquerade, Vampire the Masquerade. Because once you had someone grappled, if it's another vampire, you could very easily sink your teeth in, they now can't move, and you've killed them. And so really, to kill a vampire, you didn't need any of the other skills in the book, you just needed the potence to grapple them. And the game broke. Yeah, I don't know about later editions, but in Masquerade it was very broken. I just had a character that had potions. I could kill any vampire. They weren't a challenge to me. It's like, why would... Vampires aren't a problem, you know?
Yes, and Michael B gives a very good point in that if you're bashing somebody on the head, how do you knock them out without giving them severe concussion or brain damage?
It's almost impossible to knock someone out without giving them brain damage.
Exactly. But Hollywood sees it as, oh, they just get knocked unconscious and then they wake up and they're fine a bit later. It's like, no, that's not what happens.
I think
I did that whole video on that before, didn't I?
Yeah, I think that though goes down to what sort of level of simulation are you looking for in your combat. If you're looking for something that's very realistic and gritty, I don't think the majority of RPGs are going to cover that.
They're not, but you know what? Grappling, though, is important because it comes up in almost every game you play.
Yeah.
So the grappling rules are really important. They have to work and they have to be fair. And they have to not give one character severe power over another. Now, that kind of severe jump, that is more of a Vampire the Masquerade where grappling can be death of a character. But in most RPGs, it's not usually that severe. But the point is, grappling always comes up, so your RPG needs good grappling rules. And maybe it should have a hit point thing. Maybe grappling should be a kind of wrestling fight where you are taking someone's stamina down. Maybe that's a good way to do it. But certainly, there are too many games where it's either too easy for the strong person to grapple, or no grapple is ever long enough to subdue someone.
Yeah, I've
because
never
every turn they can escape. And yet, why not? Why not? Because sooner or later, the person that's held can't get out and gives up because they've got to conserve their energy because they can't keep fighting. And RPGs don't. I can't think of an RPG that models that well at all. I generally think. I think the right way to write a grappling system is like a kind of 3-strike rule. Beat them 3 turns in a row, and you might now have the opportunity to get them in a hold if you choose, or you could continue doing melee damage or something like that. Some kind of 3-strike system or pressed advantage type system to get in the position to do the grapple. Because if you can just grapple someone one turn and next turn they might not be grappled, then they might be grappled again. That's rubbish. That doesn't work for role playing's sake. And it's going to come up.
How about putting it in After Forever After?
I clearly need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what yet.
Yes, I agree. Yes. Like grappling a whole person is not just like doing a thumb war.
And yet, there are so many games where like the status of someone being grappled could be random every turn. And it's just not. It's okay for it not to be modelled accurately, but it needs to be modelled in a way that allows the players to role play with it because it will happen.
And Michael B says, but few RPGs model how tired you get during any combat, or how tired in general. Actually, like there aren't many that have endurance as the general thing.
Numenera does in a reasonably clever way. I have problems with the way it handles its hit points, but for different reasons to this, in that you spend your stamina. So basically, you have stats. Your stats give you 3 pools of marbles, if you like, 3 coloured marbles for your different stats. Then you spend those to expend extra effort in attacks, but they are also the pool that's getting taken when you get hit. So, it's your stamina as well as your hit points all in one thing, and your stats, so you get worse as you get worn out, which would work brilliantly if the system wasn't so flawed, because you've got these 3 stats, and what you realise is if you play a speed character, you can use all of your might pool to soak damage and all of your speed to attack, so the might-based characters that are supposed to be the tough, hard ones are actually way weaker.
Yeah, I found
and all of a sudden,
a light character.
I remember Traveller. I am thinking original Traveller. They re-released original Traveller. As far as I know, the same system still works. Your hit points, there was no hit point total. You had just 3 of your stats. I think it was strength, dex, and con. If people play Traveller, by the way, please correct me if I've got the 3 stats wrong. And what happened is, whenever you took damage, you had to lower one of those stats by that amount. And, eventually, and you couldn't split the points between the 3 stats. It had to be all off one stat.
Mm.
So you were going to weaken
Mm.
either with your health, your strength, your basic agility, was going to go down and down and down and down and down. And whilst it was a hit point system, when all was said and done, because of the way it was done, similar to a wound system, you could actually visibly see. The thing I have a problem with hit point systems, which is why I so prefer wound systems, people may have noticed. The reason I don't like hit points is they're nebulous. You don't really get a sense of what losing 10 points actually means. But if you say, right, you've just got a wound to the leg, you're whatever, you now lose a certain amount of your dexterity or agility or whatever the stat.
Yeah, and it
then
kind
all
of
of a sudden you have a physical representation, and that's something that you can visualize as a role player and sort of acquire it as you're role playing.
Hit points don't work for me for many reasons, and you kind of touched on exactly the thing there is, what does it mean for me as a human being when I lose a hit point? And the reality is that I probably can't imagine what hit points should be anymore because I'm over 40, right? I lose 10 hit points when I run 50 meters, right? Because I'm over 40, right? So, and I think for younger, I remember when I was young, I used to cross country run. It was a very different story. So,
you can get to 50 meters?
Oh, not running, no, but I can get there. I start running. I will get to 50 meters eventually. There'll be some heavy breathing along the way. So, what does it mean? And in many ways, I think combat is so, in RPGs, is so rooted in wargaming, we've forgotten that actually a wound really isn't about physical damage at all. It's about mental damage. Traveller kind of got it wrong, I think, in some extent, by taking it off the physical stats. Because that's somebody who's 18 who has no brain, who'll keep going until they die, right? But there comes a point in your life, I think, like a character over 30 should be taking the damage of the mental stats, because it's when you give up, it's your willpower to carry on through pain. Like I can run those 100 meters all the way if I pass a number of willpower checks.
Can I ask why over 30?
Well, at some point it changes, is my point. Something that, like, I've been through periods of my life where I've been in a lot of pain on a near permanent basis for various reasons or another at different points in my life. And the extra physical pain is kind of like, so I'm like, it's just pain, So that's not what would slow me down. It's the being crushed mentally is ultimately what would have stopped a rampaging Becky from coming at you if I was a hero.
A rampaging Becky?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm trying to imagine, like, if I'm to relate to wounds on a character, I'm trying to sort of put that means, right, okay, so me, if I was a PC, how would I take wounds? And there has to be some amount, like, things can break, right? But being punched in the arm doesn't break you. Having an ache from something that's going to leave a bruise, that doesn't slow you up, it just annoys you. But how much of that can you take before you are emotionally, I can't do this anymore?
I kind of liked, I mean, it's kind of hit points in a sense, bear with me. I always liked the wound system in Cult. At least first edition. I don't know how they changed it for second and third and the new Divinity Lost, because it uses a different system. But you literally could do the death by 1,000 cuts. Because so many scratches gave you a light wound, and it was cumulative, which I always liked.
Think that should, not physically, like if you get 1,000 cat scratches, I swear there are nights when I've had that many. You know, it didn't equal a broken leg.
But
even so,
what viewers really need to know when we're talking about damage and how we represent wounds is, how does a guy get blown in half and go flying around a shopping mall, still firing his weapon, sliding along a banister, still firing his weapon, sliding along by his eviscera?
No, you're missing an important point. Firing his weapon for mobility.
Yes. That I think
This is
I
a
think
reference
no matter,
to last week's game. Yeah, but that's Corporation. That
Yeah.
is a game which should have hit points.
I think no matter what happens in the remainder of the scenario, that moment is going to take some topping. And yes, I'm well aware that smile of yours means challenge accepted. But that's going to take some topping.
Well, that was something that came from you. You rolled a natural critical. I got you to roll the sever table. You got torso. Okay. Now this is Corporation. It's meant to be ridiculous. So you did the 1 in 100 shot, and you rolled. You got a severed torso. But here's the thing: your attack did not run the NPC out of hit points. I looked at that and I thought, it's Corporation. Why should severing a torso result in death? So I gave you a nice narrative description. You shot the pin off a grenade. It explodes the guy into 2 pieces. But the bit where the brain's going to keep fighting. It's Corporation.
It was very funny.
Yes.
And we enjoyed every minute.
What happened to the legs in itself was perhaps traumatic rather than funny.
Well, yeah, for the Costa people, definitely. Sue says, "Don't rest your head." Is that a Mary Poppins system?
No, it's a very modern day system. I've seen a review of it on Game Geeks, and it did sound genuinely freaky.
Yeah, but it sounds like the Mary Poppins song. Stay awake, don't rest your head. And then somebody did that creepy horror trailer and stuff, so that's what I reminded. But yeah, she says it doesn't have hit points, it's exhaustion and madness. If you fill up your exhaustion track, you fall asleep and are dependent on having someone protect you from the horrors.
It reminds me of Blades in the Dark, like going out the city, like beyond these walls, it is horrors.
Yeah, basically, don't rest your head. It's essentially going to extreme measures to make sure your character doesn't fall asleep, because once they fall asleep, then all kinds of shit can come for you.
Right. So it sounds a bit paranoia-esque, actually.
Don't fall asleep.
Yeah.
Don't fall asleep. I haven't got the creepy violin music.
Steve Ross believes that 1,000 cat scratches should equal 1 dead cat.
Wow.
Wrong. No, 1,000 cat scratches means you should show her some attention. She's trying to get your attention. And if that happens to be at 3 a.m., tough. Don't reward her with attention, though, because that'll encourage her next time.
Yes.
So that's kind of all the topics.
We
did it. We did it all.
Hooray.
Does anyone have any more to add before we quickly head on out? Oh, this Michael B says, but there is a true story from World War II. A man was charging a machine gun nest, pulled the pin on a grenade, had the arm with it, literally shot off. He reached down, grabbed the grenade, and took out the nest. A man was charging a machine gun nest, pulled the pin on a grenade, had the arm. Yeah. Okay.
And then the next bit, he said he survived and is now a US senator.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Can't argue with that. It's all in the mind, you see. Hit points are mental. So, that's it.
What do you think of hit points? Hit points are mental.
I want to just thank, before we do head off, and like we'll take a few minutes. If there's more to add, then you please do, and we'll have the chance to talk about it. But I just want to quickly thank David Gaskin, Elizabeth Chipedick, Philip Bate, AJ, Nate Hanshin, Dave Poirier, Fuke Enterprises, Amber, Brandon Fishwick, Mark Threlfall, Johnny Mangina, Russell Higgins. We love you all, and thank you very much for your support and helping to make Complus 3 possible, which will be happening sometime next year. We love you. Thank you. Thank you. Everyone for Complus 2 should either have their prizes now, or they are definitely on the way. I mean, they were sent
Yes,
like ages ago, so.
I have my prizes.
Woohoo!
I do like them very much.
So that's it. Thank you very much from me.
And me.
And thank you.
And guest me.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, that's it from Pear of Geeks for this year, I'm afraid, apart from on POG 2, where you can tune in to our live plays on Monday night. We'll keep playing that. There might be some missing games over Christmas. No idea yet. Got to look at the calendar. Haven't yet done so. But we will be back with live streams in the new year.
Yes.
So, the new thing, don't leave us, don't forget us while we're not here. Remember us fondly and come back in the new year when we return with more Pear of Geeks Live, having thought up some more content and having had to resort to bringing guests on to talk in our faces before that stuff.
And finish painting models that form a board game as well.
Wait, what?
You know,
What
we were
am I
going to
painting?
War of the Ring.
Oh, well, I've painted them all.
Well,
I have
then we
finished.
must stream. We must stream a
We
board game.
might even do that over Christmas break. So there might be one or two bonus videos, who knows. But that is it for Pear of Geeks Live for 2019. When we come back, we will have true hindsight. It will be 2020.
See everybody.
Goodbye, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yeah,
Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with us all year. Thank you for helping us raise £3,800, whatever it was.
£728.
That amount of money. Thank you so much. You've made this an amazing year. You've made a difference to so many lives. And we will be back next year to do it all over again, to improve your game and to raise money for kids in Africa who also like role-playing games and are awesome kids, and we love them, and I talk to them sometimes on Messenger, and sometimes I ignore them because they message me at weird times because they're in Uganda. So thank you very much. Thank you. Goodbye. See you in 2020.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
I haven't actually pressed the button.
I know! Press it already.